I'm going to show you how to look up alert definitions via the Aria Operations REST API. Let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm Watrous from VVork. If this is your first time here and you want to learn about automating, programming, and monitoring in VMware environments, you're in the right place. In the previous video, we took a look at how to use the Aria Operations REST API to find out what version your Aria Operations server is running. And before that, we also took a look at how to get your access token. So make certain you've taken a look at those videos. What we're going to be doing in this video is using the very same Aria Operations REST API to look up information about the alerts that have been defined in Aria Operations. So let's take a look at that in the lab environment. As you can see, I've defined various REST requests that we can use to find out information about the alert definitions and the actual alerts that have been triggered. But first, let's leave Postman for a few moments and go take a look in Aria Operations itself. So let me get logged in here. And what we're going to do in Aria Operations is take a look at the alerts that I already have defined in Aria Operations itself. So to see the alerts, we'll go to Configure. And under Configure, we'll go to Alerts. And from there, we will click on Alert Definitions. And what I'd like you to see here, presumably you already know about alerts, but what I want you to see here is that in my lab environment, I have over 800 different alerts defined that are monitoring various things that could be triggering in my environment. I'll show you here in just a few moments why I want you to see that I have over 800. So let's go back to Postman. And in Postman, as you can see, I've defined several different requests that have to do with alerts. And we're going to take a look first at get all alert definitions. As you can see here, the URL is fairly straightforward. It's just the usual suite-api/alert definitions. And then there is this trailing portion here, the path parameters, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But let's go ahead and run this request. We'll check our status code. And as you can see, I got back a status code 200, and we've got our response body. Let's actually copy that response body and take it over into a text editor such as Notepad++. I'm going to paste it in, and let me pretty things up here. We'll go to JSON Tools, Pretty Print. We'll go to JSON Tools, and we'll open up the tree browser. And why don't we take a look at what we have here? The response that we got back is in JSON format. Let's expand and see what the three items are in here. Well, one has to do with something called pageInfo, another has to do with something called links, and the third one is the one that you're perhaps most interested in. This is where we're going to see the alert definitions that we just saw in Aria Operations. So notice the number here, 812, corresponds to the alerts that we just saw. Well, if we take a look at alert definitions, and if we were to scroll down, you would see that there are 812 different entries here, and the format of each of these is fairly straightforward. We'll talk more about these in a moment, but this chunk here and all the sub-items it contains is information about one of the alerts. Now, as you might imagine, getting back 812 different results might be more than you're looking for. And that's why we have these path parameters that we saw ever so briefly just a few moments ago. So notice here, question mark page equals 0 means we want to see the 0th page. I'll explain that more in a moment, but notice it then says and page size equals 1000. Let's change that slightly. Let's change it to page size equals 100. We'll go ahead and send this request again. With the page size set to 100, we'll check our status. We'll copy our response body. We'll go back to Notepad++. We'll open up a new window. We'll paste. And again, I'll pretty this up here. Actually, I'll just jump, in this case, we'll just jump straight to the JSON tree viewer. If I can just get there. All right, so open JSON tree viewer. Once again, we've got the same three items that we saw before, but notice the third item this time is not showing 812 alert definitions because by setting this page size, we've indicated that we only want to get back 100 alert definitions at a time. Now we still can access all of the alert definitions, but we've requested that we only get them 100 at a time. Now, as you see from the path parameters here called page equals 0 means we want to see the first 100 alert definitions. On the other hand, if we were to change this to page equals 1, we would see the second page of 100 alert definitions. So that would be alert, let's call them alert number, let's say if we start number at 0, that would be 100 through 199. So you have complete control over how many items, in this case, alert definitions, you want to receive back at a time. And additionally, you can jump to a specific page worth of those. Incidentally, this page size and page parameter that we're working with here is not limited to alert definitions. There are lots of different REST requests that you can make through the Aria Operations REST API that are going to, by default, return tons and tons and tons of results. In order to filter down the results that you're getting to be able to page through them, that's what these path parameters are for. So again, this is not just for alert definitions. It's lots of other places you'll use this. All right, so with that in mind, let's go back again to Notepad++ and dig around a little deeper here. Again, under alert definitions, just randomly picking one of these alert definitions, you can see information such as the ID of each alert, which you may need for subsequent REST API calls. You can see the name of each alert. You can see a description of it. You can tell which data adapter is responsible for this alert. You can see what type of object this alert is monitoring. If you're familiar with alerts, you can see here the number of wait cycles and cancel cycles. You can see what type of alert this is. You can see what subtype. And additionally, you can see information about states. Let's drill in there. So under states, you can see what the severity level is going to be. So as you know, in Aria Operations, there's warning, immediate, critical, and auto means that the alert picks the severity. You can find out information about actually, let's just go ahead and expand each of these. You can find out information about which symptom set is being used to define this alert. You can see what is being impacted if this alert triggers. So in this case, it's impacting the health of an environment. And additionally, alerts, as you know, in Aria Operations, alerts have what are known as recommendations. So if you want to know more about the recommendation or recommendations associated with this alert, you can find out by following this here. Speaking of following, let's go back up. So now you know what's in the alert definition section, but what are these other two sections? Let's work our way backwards. Links has, in this case, 4 different entries. Let's expand those and take a look at what each one is about. So notice that the URL that we see here in this first entry is the URL that we just used to get to this information in this response body. So this is our self link that takes us to exactly where we are. But notice that if we use the next link, this link takes us to the next page. Or if you wanted to go to the first page, you can use this link. Page equals 0 means the first page. And then down here on the bottom, you can see that if you wanted to, you could jump to the very last page of alert definitions. And again, this same mechanism that we're seeing here for alert definitions is also widely applicable to other types of objects that you're going to be searching for in the Aria Automation REST API. So that's what those 4 links are about. Continuing onwards here in the pageInfo section, again, you can see the total count of how many alerts there are. So even though we only got back 100, we can still see that there are a total of 812 alert definitions. You can see which page number we're on and how big the page size is. All right, so that's a quick run through of our first of 2 requests that we're going to look at in this video. The second one that we're going to look at is called Get One Alert Definition. Let's take a look at that, and you'll notice that the URL is very similar. So we're going to the same Aria Operations server. All of our REST endpoints begin suite-API/API. For many of the requests that we make, you can use the page and pageSize path parameters. And this part here looks very similar to what we saw with the previous request, but notice we are supplementing this particular request by passing in the ID of a specific alert that you want to look up. Now, perhaps you're asking yourself, where do I go to get that alert ID? Well, you actually know how to do that. If you're paying attention before to get all alert definitions, you saw that you could look up one alert or you could look up all the alerts, but for each of those alerts, there is information about let's find one of these here. There is the actual alert ID. So if you wanted to look up this particular alert, you can do so by passing that in as a path parameter. And we're going to see how to do that, but you'll notice in my particular example, what I've apparently started setting up. I haven't actually finished this. Perhaps I'll do so before I upload this collection. But I have defined a Postman variable called Aria Ops _alert _ID. If I wanted to, I could paste in that ID that I just looked up. But the whole point of having this parameter is to be able to set it up with a value that we can change. So what was that? That was Aria Ops alert ID. Let's set its value. Now, as you can see, I've got some extra characters I don't need here. Let me get rid of this. And over here, we'll get rid of that double quote. We'll remember to save. And now having set that Postman variable, you can see that my Postman variable now has a value of a specific alert that I want to look up. Now, we're going to go ahead and send this request in just a moment, but obviously manually copying and pasting the alert ID here is not optimal. What I've done in lots of other REST requests, you can go back and look at these. But in lots of other REST requests, I've set up the post response script, which we don't have for get all alert definitions, but you could go to a request such as get all alert definitions, go to its post response script and save the alert ID of one of those alerts that we got back when we looked up all 812. Again, before I publish this collection, I will add the code here, but right now I don't have it, but that's okay. I can go to our get one alert definition request. Again, I have an alert ID actually set. Let's go ahead and click send. And as you can see, we have gotten back a series 200 code. Let's copy. We'll go to Notepad++. We'll open up a new tab, paste, and once again, we'll go to plugins and we'll open up a new JSON tree viewer. And in this instance here, you'll notice I'm not getting back 812 different alerts definitions. I'm not even getting back 100 alert definitions. I'm just getting back the one and only alert definition that corresponds to the ID that I specified. So there you have it. You are now able to look up the alert definitions. But there's more to talk about. In the next video, we are going to be talking about how to look up information about the alerts that are actually triggering. Hang on. I've written the code. If I don't write the code now, I'm going to forget to do it later, so I've written the code. Here is some code in the REST request called get all alert definitions. As the comment points out, all this code is going to do is to take a look at the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of alert definitions that are getting returned. It's going to go into the first one. I just happened to pick the first one, and it's going to get the alert definition ID for that first alert. And as you can see, I'm storing that information into the Postman variable called Aria Ops alert definition _ID. If you take a look at my environment variables for VVork, you'll notice that my Aria Ops alert definition _ID is currently blank. If we go back and run the get all alert definitions request, double check that we get back a 200 series code, If we now go back to our environment variables, notice that the alert definition ID has been set. The reason why we're doing that is so that later on, if we run another request, such as get one alert definition, notice that by virtue of running that previous request, this request here has the wrong variable here. If you look at my variables, Postman variables, you'll notice that I have two similar sounding variables called Aria Ops underscore alert underscore ID, as opposed to Aria Ops underscore alert definition underscore ID. That's the one that we want here. So I'm actually going to correct a little error that I had here initially. And notice now that I'm using the right Postman variable, you can see that value that I just saved in the previous request. So again, I want you to see a few things here. One was that I've written the code for you, but the other thing I want you to see is that I had a slight problem in the definition of this request, get one alert definition. It should have instead been looking for the alert definition ID Postman variable. Join me in the next video as we continue exploring the Aria Operations REST API.